this isn't just some random cold universe that hasn't any purpose and it just happened, but that there's actually something to be done here, to be experienced. Two ways of looking at this. One is sort of the ancient Indian wisdom tradition in the, I think the Puranas, where they describe this concept, this divine play, lila. So in the beginning there was the self, which is cosmic consciousness, Brahman, which is everything. And that's just a state of pure bliss and nothing happening, because it's very boring, because there's no duality, no dynamics. So the self hides itself from itself, so it can start to discover itself through us, through these individualizations. And that's what's happening in the cosmos now. So it's a play. That's why it's not to be taken seriously. And yeah, you're an actor, and sometimes you laugh, sometimes you cry, but that's part of the play. And I really like that idea. But then coming up to sort of more contemporary metaphysical ideas, reading Christopher Bache's LSD in the Mind of the Universe, where he just was very adamant about explaining how there seemed to be this incredibly loving intelligence behind the things, and it very deliberate and very orchestrated. And that's why after 20 years he had to stop doing these sessions, because he couldn't bear communing with this loving intelligence and detaching again. It broke his heart. And this is something he experienced. And again, this is something which probably enlightenment or I'm sure many other people have experienced this as well. And then the question is, yeah, but why does my everyday reality suck so much? And then it's probably about, it's about experiences. And if you want to have something happen, you need duality, you need left and right, you need good and bad, you need light and dark, otherwise nothing's going to happen. So if you want to have an experience, you necessarily have to have the good and the bad, but they don't really mean anything because they're contextual, which again, you can have crazy sort of recontextualizations of then what sort of morals mean and things like that. But again, it gives you, I find just thinking about these things in that way give you a more freedom to be more accepting to suffering, because at the end of the day, it's like, why do we have suffering? Why is there suffering in the universe if apparently there's this loving whatever intelligence behind the physical? But maybe if the universe is really going towards some level or state of higher complexity, the Jesuit priest and mystic Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, with his omega point, where he kind of came up with this idea that it seems to be that the universe is evolving towards this higher state of complexity or divinity. If that's the case, then we just have to wait, because it'll get better. Complexity increases, and at one point we should reach a threshold where things have to necessarily become better, because that's how it's programmed. Contrasting the entropic decay and the chaos, there is structure being assembled every day at ever higher levels. First it's life, which is like molecular computation, and then it's our brains, which are our thoughts, and then we build computers, and now we have AI, which it seems to be, this is probably not going to stop. This is going to be an evolution of consciousness. So maybe that's what's happening, kind of this consciousness field behind the things that exists wants to become more embodied and deeper expressed. And this is also something which the mystics talked about, how the divine unfolds in the physical, and that this is the project and this is the idea. And some of the basis for how complexity and like this molecular intelligence starts or begins is a bit understood by what's called non-equilibrium thermodynamics. And we're finding a lot of organic molecules on comets. So there seems to be this physical basis for why you start to put atoms together in a way that they then kickstart this replication process. And probably it wasn't just this one thing randomly happening on Earth, but it's like a physical principle which we're slowly maybe starting to understand. But also, like, coming back to cosmology, 95% of the stuff in the universe, we don't know what it is. We've given it the name dark energy and dark matter, but we see the effects, we've no clue what it is. And that's a big problem, because that's most of the universe. that scientists should be less confident in their assertions of what is possible and not, and just be more open to like, hey, we've figured out a lot of stuff, but there is still so much crazy stuff that we don't understand that we should be cautious in saying, that's stupid, we shouldn't do that, and this is the only way we should be doing it. So just, yeah, being more open-minded. Maybe this is not some physical entity flying over from wherever in the universe, but something that's actually traversing these different layers of the non-physical. And it kind of makes sense because people who smoke DMT claim to make contact with these other beings or intelligences that are inhabiting this DMT space. But coming back to the shamans, I mean, if ayahuasca, which is some vine and some bark put together randomly, you would think, in like a forest of whatever, 100,000 species. And if you ask the shaman, why exactly those two, this is a story a friend told me. She looked at him like disconcerted and said, well, the plants told us. Because the plants are living entities and intelligences and you commune with them. So this, again, spins into that these otherworldly, non-physical realms are inhabited by other expressions of agency and intelligence. And apparently that's why there's such successful healing techniques which were developed in shamanism, because they went and asked the plants. And Mother Ayahuasca as an entity. Another question I have is like, why are there so many plants which can induce psychedelic states? So the ethnobotanist Christian Rätsch, he traveled around the world and he wrote the Encyclopedia of Psychoactive Plants. 1,000 pages. It's insane. Just so many plants. And like, why would these plant molecules have any effect on our phenomenal consciousness? I mean, okay, they could poison us and we just die or go unconscious, but why these wild, crazy enhancements of experience? What's going on there? And there's so many of them. It's crazy. I would like to address the scientists and the religious people and then the people in between as well, because they get it for free. Because I think that's the main problem we're seeing today, is that either you are convinced that the universe is random, has no purpose, and you die. It's absolutely clear. You're 100%, you know this, because you're a scientifically rational person. And you believe that science is telling us that, which it isn't. So that you realize that these metaphysical questions, there's no certainty. You're locked in consciousness and you can do with that whatever you wish, because there is nothing is certain except that you are having this experience. And for the religious people, it's also just abandoning this dogmatic, static description and accepting this external authority. I find it's all about looking inwards and finding the wisdom, the spark, whatever inside you. And that's what the masters of consciousness seem to have been doing, that they have worked with their consciousness, looked inside and found, there's a lot to be found there and a lot of things that can transform. So I find that the takeaway should be, hey, we have no clue what's happening. There seems to be a bigger picture that we're not aware of, and it seems to be fine.